بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وآله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين. اللهم ربنا أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم أرنا حقائق الأشياء كما هي. ربنا زدنا علما وعملا وإخلاصا يا رب العالمين. اللهم انصر أولياءك في غزة وفي كل مكان. اللهم انصرهم على عدوك وعدوهم إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم فرج عنا وعن إخواننا في غزة وفي كل مكان. اللهم نفس كربنا وكربهم وثبت أقدامنا وأقدامهم والطف بنا وبهم يا أرحم الراحمين. وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. So over here it is, however, I think here he's criticizing the infinite regress argument. Let's go back a bit. The cosmological argument views the world as an finite effect, and passing through a series of dependent sequences related as causes and effect, stopped at an uncaused first cause because of the unthinkability of an infinite regress. And here is Iqbal's criticism of this. It is, however, obvious that the finite effect can give only finite cause. Reading from backward from where he gets that, I don't know. Or even those who say infinite effect can, or at most an infinite series of such causes. So why is series different than just we'll talk a bit about that. To finish the series, to stop at certain point and to elevate one member of the series to the dignity of an uncaused first cause is to set at naught the very law of causation on which the whole argument proceeds. I think the argument is not just based on law of causation as such, and it's also not clear whether God, for example, in these arguments is the member of series. I think that in most cosmological arguments, the cause, whatever it is, sits outside the series and initiates the whole process. Obviously, probably not in some, but you can think of. So I think that might not be a very fatal argument against that. Further, the first cause reached by the argument excludes its effect. Like exclude its effect in the sense that cause itself doesn't contain the effect, and this means that the effect constituting a limit to its own cause reduces it to something finite, so it's limiting it from those. So it depends on your conception of finite, infinite. This is, I think, a Hegelian argument there, or non-Hegelian. I can't. When we go into it, we'll be able to tell. But for Hegel, finite and infinite are not opposites, not exclusive. Again, the cause reached by the argument cannot be regarded as necessary being, for the obvious reason that in relation of cause, the two terms of the relation are equally necessary to each other. How? So there's a relationship nor is the necessity. But again, we can say that that will only apply to a cause which is part of the series. Nor is the necessity of existence identical with the conceptual. That's more. No, nor is the necessity of existence the existence. I mean, that's even debatable whether necessity you can apply necessity to existence, because necessity is something logical or conceptual, as he's calling it. Nor is the necessity of existence identical with the conceptual necessity of causation, which is the utmost that argument can prove. So argument can prove the conceptual necessity. I think that's a good argument against cosmological argument, that it might be able to prove conceptual necessity, but how is going to transfer it to an existential necessity? Because presumably necessity is a logical concept. The argument really tries to reach the infinite by merely negating the. So its concept of infinite is what finite is not. So it doesn't have any independent knowledge of infinite except through finite. But the infinite reached by contradicting the finite is a false infinite, which neither explains itself nor the finite, which is thus made to stand in opposition to infinite. The true infinite does not exclude the finite. That's the Hegelian point. It embraces the finite without effacing its finitude and explain and justifies its being. That's also a claim. I mean, the true infinite. I mean, it's hard to see what infinite is actually, unless you're thinking of in size or just a regress. Logically speaking, then, the movement from finite to the infinite, as embodied in the cosmological argument, is quite illegitimate, and the argument fails in toto. I think fails in its, at least in the way he's describing it. But in what sense it fails? Maybe it fails in proving beyond doubt, but it might not fail in, just giving us an idea or probability, or giving us reasons of why we need an argument, and a general picture of what sort of an argument. So it might be able to. So I think I think it's too early to say that it fails in toto. So I think that's where he stopped his talk about cosmological argument. Obviously, he's not explaining the argument. That's not the purpose of the chapter. So he's just giving us a summary of his views on that, and he goes on to start teleological argument. So let's just go through what we just read a bit more slowly. So let's go through Iqbal's critique of cosmological argument, and we'll look at it just in a very sort of uh, I would say non-technical way, in a layman fashion, so to speak. First, anyway, and then at some point we will look at actual cosmological argument, because here our purpose is not to understand cosmological arguments as such, but just to understand Allama Iqbal's thinking, because that would be presumably important for understanding what he says in the chapter as a whole. Okay, so it's obvious that a finite effect can only give a finite cause. So the relationship between cause and effect. So the thinking here is, if the world is finite, it means it cause must be finite as well. Firstly, it's hard to visualize what finite is and what infinite is. We can visualize what finite is. Finite is what is limited. And limitation can be of various types. Infinite, on the other hand, is not limited. At least not limited by space. But what about this? He's saying it's obvious that if affect, so he's reading affect the nature of cause from the nature of if the effect is finite, the cause must be finite as well. It's probably mean that he's thinking that infinite cannot cause finite. Because if infinite cause finite, then probably it is limitation on the infinite. And if infinite is causing infinite, then that's no explanation, because both need explanation. Or if infinite doesn't need explanation, then it means that none of them need explanation. Another thing is, it's not clear that the world is finite, for example. The things in the world might be finite, but you are looking at them abstracting from their context. The world, or the universe at least, as a whole might well be infinite, but depending on what we mean by infinite, it's hard to think of what we mean by infinite, except in physical terms, like it never ends. But if the world is infinite, then presumably it doesn't need any explanation. But Allama Iqbal's point here is that finite effect, finite cause. So finite can only come from finite. Or he concedes that, or at most, an infinite series of such causes. So cause might be finite, but the series consisting of those causes might be infinite. So series is infinite, but its members are obviously finite. So then you get a series which is infinite, but not a particular cause which is infinite. Then that doesn't give you the God of theology, at least. Then his next or second argument against it is that to finish the series, that series which is infinite, supposedly, and finish here, so calling this God, for example, this last point. To finish a series at a certain point, to elevate one member to of the series to dignity of uncaused first cause. So this would be uncaused first cause because there's nothing beyond that. It's to set at naught the very law of causation. Yeah, that we discussed last time as well. Very law of causation. Law of causation is that every cause has every effect has cause, and that's what Russell, for example, said in relation to Mill's. What Mill was told by his father when he asked who caused the world. But the answer to this might be that, God is actually not part of this series. So it is cause, but his cause is outside the series. And then he is not cause in the sense of mathematical series or geometrical series, but cause in the sense that cause is outside the universe, so to speak. Not just spatially, but conceptually as well. That's why this cause is not like a point in a series, but is a being, a self. And the whole question of creation out of nothing, that can be understood in terms of cause, but it's really not the same thing, because in cause you always work with the material, and you put force on that material to make something else. So the cosmological argument, some type of cosmological argument, might just use cause and effect as an analogy rather than taking it literally, just to make the point. And the real question is reason and not the cause. And then reason as necessary reason, sufficient reason, etc. So then you can claim that reason is something different from cause. So cause is a reason, but not all reasons are cause. So that can be a possible answer to Allama Iqbal's objection here. To finish the series at least. Okay, now the next objection is a bit different from what we have seen so far, so maybe we'll look at it in the next session. Inshallah, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala sayyidina wa maulana Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi wa azwajihi wa dhurriyyatihi ajma'in bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin.